Hey guys, this is Mrs. Warren. If you were absent on Wednesday, September 20th, 2018, you're probably watching this video. Just listen along, follow directions, and if you need to pause or rewind this video at any time, of course, you're able to do so. Now, we started off on page 29, is where we left off from the previous day, from talking about King George III and Parliament. And we watched a short video on a boycott that's going on today, boycotting the NFL, and we were talking about the different protests that people make today. Now, the pirates there, because today's Talk Like a Pirate Day, and that's what we did. Don't forget, test corrections and retakes are due this Friday. So let's go ahead and get started on page 29. If you'll go to this Google site, this is a short video, about a minute and a half long, about King George is talking to you about the Stamp Act. The Stamp Act is one of the first taxes. And by the way, skip a line under where you left off in your notes on page 29 and add this to your notes. Only write what's in yellow. Now, the taxes that the Stamp Act or the Parliament gave the colonies was so that they can pay for the French and Indian War. They went into debt, and the colonies had not been paying hardly any taxes at all. So the king said, hey, it's time for you to pay up. You know, we've been doing all this stuff for you and protecting you from the French. It's time that you paid your dues. So the Stamp Act was issued. This was a tax on all paper, newspaper, deeds, wills, dies, playing cards, anything like this. They would go to the they would go to the store and they would have to have a little stamp on there saying how much taxes they paid. People were outraged by this. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't very much money, and they had plenty of money. The problem is they didn't have a voice. Remember, for years and years, they had been running their own governments. They had the Mayflower Compact idea and the Virginia House of Burgesses. And for over 100 years, they had been making their own decisions, taxing themselves. And now, all of a sudden, the king is now infringing on their power, and they didn't like it. Plus, they had no voice in Parliament across the ocean. Now, when you put this in your notes, these are from yesterday, go ahead and finish this sentence. So you look at the Stamp Act. Today, this information is like what? Something compared to today. Now, of course, their dislike of protesting, the dislike of the tax led many to start protesting. And as I mentioned before, they didn't have a direct representative in Parliament. There's nobody from the colonies that was speaking for them in England. And they felt this was very unfair. This is called no taxation without representation. And many people started to outwardly talk terribly about this policy and how unfair it was. When you add that to your notes, draw some over here, draw a picture. Again, remember, you can stop. All right, now, how are we going to enforce these acts? Well, I mentioned one of the effects of the French and Indian War was some leftover soldiers who decided to stick around. And these are just soldiers that are hanging out during peacetime. Skip a line and add what's in yellow in your notes. Another law that the colonies thought was unfair was called the Quartering Act. This required the colonists to quarter British troops in their homes. So the soldiers stayed in their home. They used whatever supplies they needed. They let them stay as long as they needed, and they had to provide them with food. Now today, this type of law from the government putting soldiers into our homes during peacetime is protected by the Third Amendment. Our founding fathers wanted to make sure that these injustices did not happen again. But for the time during the colonial days before the American Revolution, this was a very serious problem. So once you have quartering notes, now if you quartering act to your notes, once you need an extra page, go ahead and title that Causes of the American Revolution Continued, and this should go on page 31. Now over here on the right, you can either draw a picture or you can write a question that can be answered by this information. So groups started forming, such as the Sons of Liberty. The Sons of Liberty was a protest group, kind of a secretive protest group, run by a gentleman named Samuel Adams. Yes, this is the same kind of Samuel Adams that's on the beer. He was a brewmaster, but not a very good one, and he went bankrupt several times. But he ended up becoming even a better leader of the Sons of Liberty because he did have a talent for stirring up trouble. This organization of patriots. Now, patriots are colonists that are for independence. Independence was not spoken about very often at the beginning because it was considered treasonous. And nobody wanted to be walking around talking about independence, and the wrong person would hear them and perhaps would get arrested. Many times they protested with intimidation and violence to pressure shopkeepers to not buy certain British goods or to intimidate a tax collector. So once you have got your Sons of Liberty down, go ahead and draw a picture representing them. Now we did have a brain snack. I'm not going to have you do that. And we talked about some more protests. Now, at the beginning of class, we talked about why the NFL and the boycotting and the kneeling at this during the national anthem. I'm sure you've heard about it before. There's an active boycott on Wendy's. There's an organization that protects farm workers, migrant farm workers, against abuses. And Wendy's not a part of that and chooses to buy their vegetables and products from somewhere in Mexico that doesn't protect their workers as well. So people are trying to force these companies into doing different things by showing that they're not going to buy it. Well, these are modern day protests. You know, Americans love to protest. Go ahead and skip a line in your notes. So these are two of the most effective protests that the colonists used. First one is called a boycott. Now, today we can refuse to watch a TV show, refuse to shop at a certain place, or refuse to buy a particular type of product to tell that company, hey, we don't appreciate what you're doing, change your mind. Well, that's what we were trying to tell King George back in the 1770s. We refused to buy British goods. We made a lot of money. They made a lot of money from us. We made a lot of money from them. But when we started to refuse to buy their goods, it hurt Britain in the pocketbook. It hurt their money, hurt their wallet. We wrote petitions to King George and our Parliament members asking for change, asking for a representative. Because these two were very effective, Parliament repealed the Stamp Act. Repeal. Now, repeal means to cancel or to stop. Okay, so that worked, and that was great. Things were going well. We're like, all right, they're finally listening to us. King George is, we love, loyal to the king. But no, it's not going to start there. So once you have those notes down, we're going to draw a picture. Now, we did a couple more activities in class. But unfortunately, we can't do that as makeup work. This is the end of the lesson. So if you have any questions, if you can, please watch the previous videos if you were able to find those on YouTube. And let me know if you have any questions. Thanks. See you soon.